Have people joined?
We will join now. So Arjun, let's give it a minute and a half for everyone to join. Then we can start.
Yeah. Okay, I think we can get started and people will trickle in. Hi everyone, my name is Arjun Kang Joseph. I'm the head of the Knowledge Transfer Program at Carnegie India. Welcome to the second workshop in the Tech for Thought series. We're delighted to have partnered with Plaksha University in building out Tech for Thought. Today's session is called Building an AI Nation and will be hosted by Ananta and Priya. Ananta is a visiting scholar with Carnegie India. He has over 23 years of experience in the technology industry, and half of it has been in the areas of government affairs and public policy advocacy. Based out of New Delhi, he leads the government relations function for a large technology company and works on a spectrum of policy issues related to R&D, manufacturing, and adoption of emerging technologies in India. He leads many large initiatives in partnership with industry and academia and spends time in advocacy in the areas of next generation technologies like 5G, AI, drones, and autonomous systems. He holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from Kerala University and an MBA from the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. Priyadarshini is an associate fellow with the Technology and Society program at Carnegie India. She's interested in emerging issues at the intersection of law, technology, and finance. Prior to working at Carnegie India, she was a fellow at NIPFP, and in the past, she has been a partner at Vadhya Gandhi & Co. So today's session is going to be divided into two parts. In the first part, Ananta will take us through his presentation where he'll walk us through a number of aspects of AI. In the second part, we'll move to a conversation between Ananta and Priya, and this will be followed by a round of question and answers. Please feel free to add your questions to the chat or in the Q&A section throughout the session. Thank you once again for registering, everyone, and Ananta, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Arjun. Thanks for inviting me and happy to be here. Just give me a minute. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see it?
Yep, all good.
Okay, yeah. First of all, thanks a lot once again, for inviting me and for all the people who are joining in. Glad to be here. This topic of AI and in India has been pretty close to what we've been doing at Intel for the last 3 years. So many of the things that I'm going to talk today is based on our experience of working in the space and what we have done and what we see as the future. So what I want to do today was quickly is break this whole presentation the next 35-40 minutes into three sort of buckets. One is I want to give you a brief about AI basics for people who are new to this particular space. I thought it might be interesting to know about some of the nuances of AI, right? And how it relates to what we'll talk sometime later. That's one. Second thing, I want to really talk about why is AI even important? Why should even countries be really bothered about looking at AI technology? There are so many technologies, but out of that, why is AI so important, right? The next thing is we'll take a look at what AI holds for India, right? What is the real India story there, and what can they really do? What are our opportunities, right? And I'll give some ideas in terms of what we are doing and how we see that, right? That's how I want to break it. I think I will run through the presentation, then of course that we'll take questions at the end. Okay. So quickly jumping on some of the AI stuff, right? I think the topic of AI is not new. I think AI itself, has been, a area of science that has been studied for the past 7 decades, right? I mean, it started in 1950 with Alan Turing asking this question: Can machines really think? Right? That's where it started, right? From then on, this has been a constant study. Various people have done this, right? But if you see it, AI has really come into prominence in the last decade simply because one of the key factors for that to happen is one. For AI to really work, you need a lot of storage, right? And you need a lot of compute, right? What really happened in the last decade is that compute and storage has become so cheap, right? Today, you walk around with a 10 teraflops of compute in your hand in your mobile phone, right? That's what has happened, right? And that's affordable. So AI is really being talked today because of compute and storage become very cheap, right? So that's key, right? And if you look at AI is this umbrella, right? Any systems that can actually sense, reason, act, or sort of mimic human intelligence is called artificial intelligence, right? But underneath that, machine learning, right? You would have heard this word called AI, ML, DL, used interchangeably, right? Many times, right? So machine learning is a part of AI, right? Which actually, are about systems, algorithms that actually improve the performance over a period of time without much of intervention. The more data that they see, they get better at it, right? It sort of learns from going over data more and more over a period of time. That's what machine learning is. And deep learning is actually a subset. It's a very specific technique within as part of machine learning, right? As I would explain to you in the next slide, right? It's a very small subset of this particular machine learning, which actually uses concept called artificial neurons, right? Which is basically mimicking how the brain works, right? I mean, brain works through this neuron circuitry, right? I mean, deep learning is a way of mimicking that, and it is called deep learning because there are various layers of learning that happens over a period of time, right? So that's what deep learning is about. Now, if you really look at it overall, right? I mean, AI is largely about statistics, right? I mean, machine learning is largely about statistics, mathematics, right? That's what it is, right? And deep learning is slightly different, right? Its learning is more based on experience and other stuff, right? So important part for AI to really work, and this is critical for us to understand, is that for AI, for you to build an AI system, you need diverse skill set to come together. You need people who understand data science, people who understand the domain well, people who can code, right? And a lot of other skill set needs to come together. And to that extent, AI is slightly different from other technology that we have seen so far, right? So what I want to do now is to quickly give you some nuance of what machine learning, what deep learning, how really happens, right? When we talk generally of machine learning, right? The earlier ways of doing it is that somebody has to figure out, for example, let's say you want to identify a face, right? Somebody has to figure out what is those unique elements of a face that you are actually looking for, right? Or you might say that is the face round, spherical, I mean round, or it is some other shape. You will look at distance between eyes, what's the nose width, right? These might become characteristics of identifying a particular face, and you train an algorithm to some of the statistic models like SVM, random forest, and things like that, and say, okay, if you have all these features, and if these features have certain value, also this is this person, right? That's how machine learning typically is. If you use algorithmic based stuff. What deep learning has done is that with deep learning, you have done away with telling the system that what are you looking for. right? All that you do in deep learning is you will say, you input a face and the system will tells you, is this person? Okay, you say no, right? It'll learn. So it sort of keeps learning over a period of time until it gets it right, right? So all that a deep learning system needs is data, right? You input data and you sort of tell whether the outcome that it throws at you is right or not. If it's wrong, it sort of goes back and relearns and throws out everything until it gets it right. So that's how deep learning works. So what you see in this is there is no intervention in terms of somebody coming and telling it what is the characteristics, how do you identify a face, right? The system learns by itself, and that's powerful, and that's what you see a lot of things happening. Even within deep learning, there are various techniques, models that are applied today, right? We won't go into that, but but the way deep training happens itself, you would have heard this, typically in AI is training inference, right? I mean, what are these concepts, right? For any system to first get the basics right, you got to say, okay, this is the input, the output is right or wrong, right? And you have to know, for example, let's say you want to look at a bicycle, right? You have to show a lot of bicycles to it, and it'll predict. You say yes or no. If it is no, it'll go pre-learn things like that, right? So you have to train the system on an input output, right? Once it is trained and once it is sufficiently, what do you say, accurate in terms of prediction, right? Then what you do is you deploy it in a system where from then on it goes on its own, right? Whenever it sees the bicycle, it will automatically identify the bicycle, right? So that is inference. So in AI deep learning technology, there are two phases of how you would do it. One is training, which is largely the part where you're teaching the system what to look for, what are the characteristics, and inference is when it's on itself going trying to identify. So if you really look at it in a deployment model, if you want to deploy, for example, you have deployed AI systems, in a manufacturing line where you're trying to find out defective products. For example, let's say there is a car and there is a small scratch in the paint, right? You want to identify that, right? So if you look at it in the entire production deployment, of the system that happened today, AI is a small element of it, right? I mean, it only comes, in the small part that is shown there, right? And even for that part, right, the amount of the key things that are required for you to deploy the AI model is two key things, right? One is during training, you need a lot of data. You need to have a lot of data. And if you look at it, if you look at the chart, it talks the innovation cycle, right? About 50% of the time that you used in developing AI training is the data that you have, right? You got to curate the data. You got to ensure that they are in the right format. You got to load the data and ensure that they are right? And then work on, the compute, use compute to sort of, identify this. That's what happens. So if you look at it in compared to a normal programming language, the majority of effort in AI system is actually your time that you spend in one, actually curating the data, and the other time is spent in training the data, right? So that's where you spend most of the time, right? So I want to keep this in mind because this has relevance to how things happen, right? At least when we talk about why India is important, right? I think there is a relevance to that, right? Now, as I told before, data is critical for AI to make work, and not just any data. We need lots of data and variety of data, okay? And that is critical for an AI system to work, in the optimal way, right? So you need a lot of data, you need a variety of data, and compare this to a country like India, right, where this country is all about volume and variety, right? I mean, every 100 kilometers or every other thing that you go, the entire thing changes. Your food, your language, your looks, everything changes, right? So this is critical, right? And these things are important, when it comes to AI. Also, now having seen the basics of AI, I want to really talk about why is AI even important? Why should we even bother about looking at AI, right? I mean, AI has the potential to be transformative, and today they are being used in many sectors. Be it consumer, you're already seeing that when you shop in Amazon, when you shop in other retails. You are actually looking at AI algorithms in play, right? I mean, you're looking at health, where a lot of diagnostics, a lot of other users are being used in and finance retail. So AI in the coming years is going to be sort of pervasive, right? It will be sort of like today the way you use Excel, right? I mean, you're going to use AI like that in the coming years, right? And the reason why it becomes transformative, right? I mean, just take a simple example that I have there. If you're able to increase the efficiency of a system by 1% every day, right? at the end of the year, you end up with 37.8 times the thing that you originally started with. In the similar case, right? If you reduce the efficiency of a system by 1% every day, right? I mean, you'll end up with nothing, right? So the power of AI is its ability to increase productivity, right, and increase the efficiency for you to do more, and that's where the power comes from. And technology today, right? If you look at it, right, they are actually what is it? Mature. For example, the image recognition technologies tools that you have today, right? I mean, they can 97-98% accuracy sort of do facial recognition, right? Person identification, right? Languages, you use them in Siri's and Google, Alexa, and others, right? I mean, they are getting better and better over day, and they are at a point where they are efficient enough for it to be deployed at mass scale, right? So you will see more of this coming up, and technology is ready today. But having said all this, right? There is this survey done by Frost and Sullivan, right? While a lot of this is being talked, a lot of this is happening, right? We are only just the beginning, right? People are simply just trying to begin, how useful AI can be, and they're starting to deploy, right? In a survey that was done, about 60% of people say that they understand AI and they want to use AI, but only 12% have really deployed it, right? Which means that we are just seeing the beginning of AI being deployed at scale in many of these sectors, right? And that's critical. And we are at a point of inflection point where we would see rapid adoption of this technology, and it is important for us as a country, and as this thing. What AI is supposed to sort of do is that I think this is a survey done by PwC. It says that AI technology itself is going to add about 16 trillion, to the global GDP and economy, right? And that's a lot of growth that's going to come from one single technology adoption. And when you compare that to India, we're going to see at least $1 trillion increasing, GDP in the next 15 years, right? So it is important as a country, right, where we are trying to increase our employment, where we trying to sort of go up the value chain, right? It is important that both for addressing the market that is out there, which is actually developing for AI, plus also adopting AI for the whole country, in order to sort of increase the efficiency of, let's say, our healthcare system, education system. How do you use it in agriculture, right? So there are many things that we could do today, for example, to make our processes more efficient. So that's why AI is critical technology, and it is imperative that as a country, right, all countries are trying to see how they can actually sort of get a handle of this particular stuff, and how they can actually be a force to reckon with in the global stage, right? If you really look at it, if you want to talk about what does it really take for a country to sort of look at be a AI nation, right? I mean, I think there are, if you read the book AI Superpowers by Kai-Fu Lee, he gives you 4 clear criteria that is required for any country to be, right? If you distill that, it actually boils into 3-4 things for us, right? One, data, availability of data, not just any data, availability of high quality curated data, right? That you could use to do any of those stuff, right? India as a country has a lot of data, but we still lack of high curated data. Second thing is talent, right? When you look at it, for AI systems to work, right, there is a lot of coding that needs to be done. There's a lot of data scientists that you require, and there are a lot of mathematicians that you need to sort of make AI systems work, right? So you need a lot of talent, that needs to be available, right, for AI system to sort of. So it is important for countries to start looking at skilling initiatives, right? We got to create the talents that are required, right? We need to reskill people in many places that we have already used them, right? And things like that. So it is critical that we have a very large talent pool. The next thing is, it's not just sufficient that you have the technology or you have the talent, right? I think we should be able to create a market and a demand, for this technology to be adopted, right? And I think it is critical for us to start looking at adoption of AI, right, and AI-based solutions across, because that creates a demand, and it sort of creates a virtuous cycle for more investment to happen in these technologies, right, and more talent to be created, and it's a virtuous cycle, and that is critical. And finally, right, it's important that you have a very supportive policy framework, right? I think that's critical. as you would see, right, there are, while we have spoken about a lot of good things about AI, right, there are the other side as well, right? I mean, I think there are these biases, there are these issues of privacy, security, right? And those things need to be handled in a very way for us to really enable and then really, benefit out of the goodness that comes out of it, right, and minimize the impact that it creates, in the other parts of the economy, right? So it's important that we have policy, enablement and an appropriate policy framework for us to really, leverage and use the potential of AI. So what I want to do in the next couple of slides, really talk about India, right? I mean, why are we upbeat about India? Why do we think India is a great place to one? As I told before, data is a critical component of AI, right? As a country, I think we have one of the largest use and consumption of data in the world, right? I mean, today we do consumption of about 11.5 GB per month per user, right? Which is actually far more than any other country. I mean, and considering the fact that we are only at 45% data density penetration, right? So we as of today we are a country that is creating a lot of data, right? But we need to ensure that we are able to create data that are usable, right? I mean, that's the key, and that's what we need to focus on. The second thing, talent, right? uh, Based on a survey done by a large consulting firm, right? I mean, I think India today has the third largest AI manpower available, right, after US and China, right? US is about somewhere around 16%, China is about 9%, India is at 8%, right? I mean, I think we are there, and we are increasing that particular talent pool and availability. That's increasing at 10x rates, year on year, and that's really showing a lot of fast growth. So I think we have the talent base available, right? And India being one of the outsourcing destinations of the world, right? I think we have a lot of software talent available, right? All that we need to do is sort of reskill them into these technologies that are critical for success of AI, right? So as a country, we have the data, we have the talent, right? And one area where we lack is actually, this is where, as you might have seen that, uh, as a country, we don't generally create AI IPs, right? We are basically consumers of IPs that are created somewhere else, right? Maybe by other companies in the world, by other nations, right? We consume that and build solutions, applications on top of that, right? But one area that we need to focus on, right? We are not, in terms of the core talent required to sort of build those IPs, algorithms, and frameworks, tools, right? We need the talent, right? And we need to focus on creating the talent. We are not there today. So this is a big gap, that we see in what we have, right? And we need to focus on creating the top talent, right? And it is important because, as a country, right, our problems are unique, right? And AI works on data, and when you use systems that are developed outside, right, they might not provide optimal performance for what we need. So we need to be able to provide and create those big fundamental technologies for us to use, to solve our own problems, right? I mean, that's critical. So this is a gap that we need to work on. And if you look at the other scenario, right, especially the startup ecosystem, right? I mean, India has the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, right? I think 2021 has been a great year for us because we've already, in the first 2 quarters, we have seen 10 unicorns, more than 10 unicorns come up, right? So we have a great ecosystem, right, that is already available there within the country, and it is actually increasing, right? So more from a talent, data, entrepreneurship, and the ecosystem for such kind of development, India is doing pretty good. But unfortunately, right, nobody talks about India today, right? You look at any global discussions, there are only two countries that are spoken about when it comes to AI, right? And that's either US or China, right? And both have very completely different models of the way they approach it, right? It's China is largely state-led, initiatives, that's about increasing adoption of AI, and it's largely state-led, right? US is largely led by the private sector, right? Now, one of the opportunities for India is actually to create a niche for ourselves, in this global AI race. One of the things that will serve us really well, right? If you are able to focus on the social aspects of AI, right? I mean, if you're able to develop AI for social good, right, and keep that as a focus, right, and that's really was the Niti Aayog's national AI strategy talks about, right? It focuses on 5 key areas, which are typically the social sector areas like education, healthcare, smart mobility, right, smart cities, right? So those are all areas that we need to focus on, and if you're able to look at challenges in this area, solve this problem, we would not only solve the problems that we have and provide benefit to our citizen, but also the humanity itself, right? So I think we have an opportunity here, right? Opportunity to sort of create a niche for ourselves in this particular space, and Indian model is completely different, compared to what you would see in others, right? I mean, I think India has this model of if you look at Aadhaar, if you look at GST, right? These are all social platforms that are built at scale and actually opened out to the ecosystem to innovate on top of it, right? And I think that's a great model for us to follow, right? And we have seen a lot of success in that model, right? And those models will really help us, right? And where government builds this base infrastructure required for AI to thrive, right? And top of it, we have our startups and other ecosystems coming and innovating on top of it, right? And actually using it. For example, what we have seen in our UPI interface, right? I mean, that's a fantastic example of building a platform, right? And the community and the industry coming and innovating on top of that, right? So we need to create that, and the place why we are optimistic about India is that as I told before, right? I think AI needs diversity, right? Variety, right? In data, right? And we have that as a country, that's in our DNA. So we are very well, adapted to that particular kind of stuff, and we have data sets that can be made available, that we can create, that can actually help us do that. Second thing is scale. India is a country of scale, right? I mean, I think we have this experience of creating the world's largest biometric database, right? The UPI is one example. Then we have the National Digital Health Platform coming up, right? So we have built systems at scale, and that can actually sort of cater to 1.3 billion people, right? And we have that models, right? And we can actually easily use them, and we have seen a lot of success out of it. And the thing is, to able to sort of create more efficiency. And today, if you let's say look at healthcare, right? We are not going to produce doctors, at the rate that is required or the recommended rate in the coming years, right? I mean, I think what we can really use AI and technologies to sort of make the existing available talent pool more efficient, so that we can provide quality healthcare and other stuff, in ways that has not been imagined. And the final thing is, we need to start looking at more like a value democratization, right? I mean, I think this is critical, right? Where there is participation from government, there is participation from academia and industry, where we come together to create these platforms, and that actually helps advance the technology, not just for technology creation, but also use and adoption to solve real challenges that we have in this country. And finally, what I want to do is, sort of look at what we are doing, right? Over the past 3 years, some other things that we've been working on is trying to really create this public infrastructure, right? I mean, as I told before, what we really need is an institutional framework, where we can actually, enable the startups, the researchers with basic infrastructure like compute frameworks, right? And annotated data, right? Data that are actually structured, that are being cleaned up, that are available for the entrepreneurs and researchers to use, so that you can actually accelerate the development and technology development and solutions, using this one. This is what we've been doing, right? I think we have 2 key programs. One is called NIME, which is basically an applied R&D center, which is actually set up in joint partnership with IIIT Hyderabad and also Public Health Foundation of India in partnership with Government of Telangana, based out of IIIT Hyderabad. So we work on this thing there. We have one more center that is there, which actually focuses on called the Emerging Technology Center, which focuses in partnership with Indian School of Business, which actually focuses on enabling governments to adopt AI, right? I mean, I think today the challenges government really needs a lot of help, in identifying the right solutions, right technology in terms of adopting them and actually providing value services to the citizen, right? So this is what we've been working on. And apart from this, we have a lot of programs on skilling. We have programs on skilling at various levels, schools, AI for youth, and we also do a lot of work on educating the policymakers through our digital readiness program. And we have also opened up a new program for citizens. It is important for citizens to understand the implications of this technology. So last month, the Prime Minister launched this AI for All program, which is basically a citizen 4-hour based training program for citizens. That is available in 11 languages. So that people can go and benefit of it. Finally, I want to close it with the last thing, right? I mean, I think innovation is all about your ability to take an invention and use it for impact, right? And what we are trying to do is that what we need in this country, right? It's not that we are not spending. It's not that we are not focusing on those areas, right? It is critical that we focus on we create a focus on this area, get every stakeholders into some platform, right? And drive this for impact, for the end user, right? And I think today we are at good. There are a lot of good things happening in the country. I'm optimistic that over the period of years, as you will see more and more of that coming up. Yeah, that's all I have. Thanks,
Thanks, Ananta. That was very enlightening. So now we're going to move into the second part of the session, which will be a conversation between Priya and Ananta. Just before I hand over to Priya, I just want to encourage everyone to ask whatever questions they may have to the Q&A section. Thank you. Over to you, Priya.
Thanks, Arjun. Thanks, Ananta. I agree with Arjun. That was a very enlightening presentation you made. And I think you gave a great snapshot and set the context for how to build an AI nation, touching upon all aspects, starting with the basics on what is artificial intelligence, how to sort of distinguish that from machine learning, deep learning, right down to what are the key enablers that are required to sort of boost this field in the country. So thank you for that. What I thought we could do is I have a few questions of my own. I have a couple of broad ones that are going to touch upon the field in general, and maybe dive into one or two aspects that you spoke about earlier, just to sort of unpack them from a policy or a regulatory perspective, and then open it up for questions from the attendees. And my request for the attendees would be that if you have any questions that you haven't keyed in yet, please feel free to do so in the meantime. The first question I have for you, Ananta, is that if you look at the last 5 or 6 years, right? It seems to me that artificial intelligence as a field has taken a central role in policy thinking across the world. Here in India, we've had the Niti Aayog come out with a discussion paper in 2018 on the National Strategy for Artificial Intelligence. More recently, they released a white paper on responsible AI for all. And India really is just one of more than maybe 20 countries across the world that have released national strategies. And maybe even I'm equally guilty of perpetuating what you complained about earlier, but China released its national plan for AI in 2017. I think the US started with a report that the White House released way back in 2016. It's one of their first. And UK, I think earlier this year, also proposed to bring about a new plan after holding extensive consultations on how they would like to sort of transform UK into a hub for AI applications. So there's a lot of activity, and it's not just in terms of a strategy paper, right? Which sort of envisions in broad terms, the role that AI would play in furthering a nation's goals or economic growth or whatever. But it's also in terms of something more specific. For example, whether it's in terms of guidelines in certain sectors, legislation like the data protection legislation, or regulations, right? So there is a lot of activity that I sense has been going on in the last 5 or 6 years, give or take a few years here and there. And my question to you is, what has changed? What is different today? And the reason I'm asking is because we've seen this in the past, right? We've, like you mentioned, AI has been around. It's not a new concept. It's been around for about 7 decades. but there has been an ebb and flow in the interest and even funding in this area. But what has changed today? Has anything changed?
I mean, a lot of things have changed, Priya. I mean, I think, as you'd say, in the last 5 years, right, the technology has really come to the fore, right? People are seeing the technology at play today, right? Today, I think we are at a place where, you go to, there are applications like Auto.ai where you can actually go transcribe this thing online, and that's about 95-96% accurate, right? That's one. You can go to places like Copy.ai and actually write a blog, right? Just by giving few lines of, what you want to write about, right? So the technology has come along, not just that, right? I mean, nations have started taking a look at it because one, the technology has matured, not just that, right? It's sort of become a security problem also, right? Because there are nations which started talking about weaponizing this particular technology, which means that if you are left out, right, you would be sort of at the mercy of people who have this technology, right? So every nation is there. And again, there is also a lot of these issues around, the not just the positive impact, there are also the other side of it, right? I mean, a lot of people are worried about job loss, right? What is it going to do to my job market, right? I mean, what happens to the bias? What happens to cybersecurity? Privacy, right? So there are a lot of other issues that actually, really impact people, right? And that needs a lot of discussion, and that's why I think, governments are really active at it right now. We want to see a phase where we want to start looking at government regulating this technology to a larger extent, right? I mean, I think it has come to that point, where people are worried about what AI is going to do.
And I guess my next question to you is, where are we in the innovation spectrum? Have we reached a point where you're going to see machines exhibit the same level of consciousness or intelligence autonomously as we do as humans? Are we there yet? Or is it really automation that we are talking about, or are we somewhere in between?
I mean, I think we are not there yet in terms of general purpose AI yet. I think it's
Yes.
still about a decade more than that away, right? If you're optimistic. Today, what you're seeing is, very application focused AI use, right? I mean, so for example, today AI has created vision technologies, right? Anything to do with vision, right? Cameras, right? Automatic sensing, those things they're great, right? There are a lot of work that is being done on, manufacturing, robotics, and things like that, right? So there are niche places where they are happening, right? But really, I wouldn't say that we are at that place where where we should be really worried about missions taking over. I mean, I think we're not there yet. I mean, that's still far away.
And do you think COVID has impacted the trends that you mentioned earlier in terms of there being technological breakthroughs and therefore leading to the kind of activity and interest we're seeing today? Because if you take the example of online payments, COVID has really spurred online payments, right? It's changed consumer behavior. What has it done? Has it had any impact on these trends? Where
I think COVID has really, sort of, accelerated many of digital technologies, and AI is not new to that, right? I mean, I think the amount of investment that is going on into drug research, into a lot of other stuff using AI technologies, right? So there are a lot of applications of AI that were used in terms of finding, drugs and things like that during the COVID period. So you would see a lot of activity, right? And in general, COVID has really accelerated all digital technologies, and AI is not any different.
It's not an exception. Okay. And when it comes to India, I think what we're looking to do is not just boost the development and deployment of AI applications here, but I think there is also a sense that we want to share our experiences, our technologies, our learnings with others. So, I mean, if I were to ask you, where do you see, or how do you see India taking a leadership role? In which aspects or in which sectors? What would you say they were, particularly because the NITI Aayog's strategy paper that I mentioned earlier talks about AI in core areas, which are essentially social sector areas like health, education, mobility. So where do you think we would probably take a leadership role?
I mean, I think we should focus on social sector. I mean, I think that's our own assessment as well, right? I mean, I think government is right saying that we should go after social sector, right? I mean, if you really look at it, the private sector, companies will do what they have to do, right? I mean, they will invest and create technologies that will help them, right? But the place where government needs to play a big role is the social sector, and that's where you have the maximum impact, right? So imagine this, if you're able to take a X-ray, I mean, take a scan, right? Put it on WhatsApp, right? And you get a diagnosis back from a system, right? I mean, that's powerful, right? You can fundamentally change the way we deliver health services in this country, right? And at cost effective, right? So I think the government should rightly, focus on that particular step. And the place where you can actually help and do a lot of this, we have many of the fundamental blocks available today for you to deploy this technology at scale, right? For example, if you look at UPI, UPI is a system that's pan-India, right, nationwide scale, right? I mean, there is no similar systems in any other government across the world, which actually to that extent, where government has created that scale, right? So we know how to create system at scale and deploy them at that scale, right? And AI would be no different, right? If you're able to create a system where, example, let's say, even for technology development, right? If you're able to create a compute cluster or access to the cluster, right, across the country, right, through various data centers across the country, right, that itself will spur a lot of innovation, spur a lot of talent development in this country, right? So we have the experience of doing things at scale, and we have, for example, if the national health database comes up, right, you would have the opportunity to sort of use that data and provide more services to the citizens, right? You could diagnose to more, right? So there are a lot of things working for us, right? All that we need is a very focused approach. Let's say if I want to be on healthcare, we need to get everybody to come and work on a particular problem, right? I mean, today what's happening in this country, we are spread across 1,000 small, initiatives that don't really add up and create the impact for us. What we need really is that focus in one area and go after it with that.
Actually, one of the questions I had for you a little later on, which maybe I'll come to that later. Can you tell us a little bit, and because you and Intel have been working closely with the government as well as I think several state governments. Can you tell us a little bit about what the governmental efforts have been to boost AI adoption in India, especially those you think are going to have a significant impact in doing so?
I mean, I think there are various initiatives happening both at the state level and central level, right? I mean, I think today, if you look at it, every state government has a startup, promotion agency, right? Startup agency. What they do is they work with startups, get interesting solutions into the government, system, right? And that's what they do, right? Which means that many states are already doing this, right? For example, Telangana has this emerging technology, center, right, which basically, works with various departments, identify use cases, brings startups to them, helps them deploy things like that. So every state government is doing this, right? And at the central level, there are many. Each department has their own initiative. For example, Department of Science and Technology has this National Cyber Physical System Initiative, which is about 5,000 crore, initiative. Which has a very interesting model where there is a committee which has experts from industry and a lot of people who decide where this money goes, right? What they have done is they sort of use this money to set up about 20 you might call it COEs or innovation hubs, right, in this thing, right, where Intel is part of one of those, right? And they're funded and they are given specific charters to go after to sort of build solutions technologies. So that's happening in this thing, right? Until a few years, Niti Aayog was leading this charter on implementing the national AI strategy. But of late, MeitY has been given the charter to sort of drive the national AI strategy. So they are working on this national program on AI, right? And which you would see, some communications coming out soon. It's a large program, right? With the intent of creating that focus and helping build on, whatever we have done so far.
When it comes to these initiatives, particularly in terms of putting in place policy frameworks or regulatory frameworks, what in your experience would you say has been the approach of the government? Because it's a fascinating question, right? I mean, when it comes to emerging technologies, sometimes you see that regulatory frameworks are playing a catch-up game, or they're at the other end of the pendulum in terms of, sort of over-regulating, what could be termed as over-regulating and killing innovation. And also, I've come across arguments to say that when you talk about artificial intelligence, really it's just a bunch of general purpose tools, like say distributed ledgers, a blockchain, right? So really what you need to be thinking about is not regulating AI per se, but its application, which leads to the issues or concerns which require or which have policy implications and which require you to put in place the legal regulatory frameworks, whether it's for protecting consumers, you mentioned, ensuring there's no bias in decision making, ensuring that processes are transparent, so on and so forth. So it's really, what you should be doing is crafting an issue specific or a sector or taking a sectoral approach. But on the other hand, data is one of the inputs, right? And really, I mean, what we have today is a cross-sectoral personal data protection bill and a non-personal data governance framework that is being mooted. So that's one part of the story. On the other hand, you also have some of the regulators taking a sectoral approach here in India. So for example, RBI has come out with regulations in the past for payment aggregators on data localization requirements. I think the ICMR has come up with national guidelines on use of artificial intelligence techniques for gene therapy and clinical trials, right? So, I mean, what is the overall approach of the government towards regulating artificial intelligence? What have you seen?
I mean, I think it's very hard to sort of pin down. There is this one particular strategy the government is following, to sort of do this happen, right? I mean, I think if you look at it, governments are based on departments. Each departments have their own view of how things to happen, right? I mean, the ideal way to sort of look at it that you have the PDP as a bare minimum that comes in that takes care of the basic stuff, and each sectoral ministries and others come up with their own regulation to sort of do that, right? That might be ideal thing to do because every industry has their own nuance, own requirements, right? And it can't be captured in one big thing, right? So you have one PDP like bill that actually takes care of the basics, right? And on top of it, you build sector specific stuff. That would be the ideal way to sort of do this. In my own opinion, I think this is my personal opinion is that I think regulating this industry too soon is actually it's actually sort of disastrous to some extent, right? Because one, we don't know what has really happened. I think the best way to do it is take a sector, right, which is relatively safe, right, where there is so much of issues, sort of implement the solution in this thing, watch it for some time, understand the challenges, and then go start regulating, right? I mean, I think if we don't do that model, right, I mean, even for people who are creating this technology, they don't know what problem they're going to face. I mean, and especially when as a new technology, AI, you don't know how it is going to be used, how users going to react to it, what are the challenges, right? I mean, I think it should sort of be an iterative cycle where you do go with some basics, regulatory frameworks, then over a period of time, increase as you see, misuse and other stuff, right? I mean, that should be the ideal approach.
Right, and I mean, you've mentioned multiple departments and, both the federal and the state governments being involved in this exercise, including in terms of actually articulating their own policies. So is there anybody taking the lead or in charge? Should there be one? Is that even feasible? Especially if you could look to maybe one or two countries outside. Are there any lessons that we can learn? Is there anything that, we are seeing is different from the way we are doing things here?
I mean, I think it's actually, AI is a cross-sectoral, this thing stuff, right? Which is essential, which will impact all this thing, right? Maybe the way to do it, right? I mean, when it comes to policy making, there are no right and wrong answers per se, right? I mean, it's all what you can achieve and do. There are models where there is this where there are models that have been mooted before. We're talking about a national AI commission or a national AI mission kind of a body, which has all the representation from ministries, which basically takes an overall view of what's happening in this country on AI, be it industry, be it academia, be it startups, right? And then coordinating activities so that you're achieving. That was the initial plan. My understanding today is way that has morphed is today that MeitY, in my understanding, MeitY has become that large body that's going to coordinate with multiple ministries on this, right? Whether it is the right approach, I think we will have to wait and see, because that particular plan is still not out yet, in terms of how this is going to pan out. But in my opinion, there has to be an overarching body that looks at it, right? And provides leadership, focus, because this is such a critical technology. You can't miss the bus on this, right? I mean, it's going to be disaster if you miss the bus on AI, right? So it's important that we create that focus, right, at the level, at the senior most level, right, and direct activities. See, as I told before, right, I mean, I think our challenge is not never been resources, right? I mean, there are enough money spent by DST, Science and Technology Ministry, MeitY, Health Ministry. Everybody's spending tons of money, but those are all going in pockets, and those don't create that impact that you want, right? I mean, what we need to do is pool all these resources, direct it at places where it actually creates an impact, right? I mean, impact, the final impact, right, should be the criteria for where you're spending money, right? So so it's important that we create that focus, right? And the other thing that we need to do is, which I've not done so far effective so far, is that the private sector talent. The talent for developing is all in the private sector. We have so far never leveraged that to sort of advance ourselves, right? I mean, the irony of all this stuff is that we got 2,000 of the world's best companies, design center based out of India, right? I mean, I think all their R&Ds are outside, based out of India, right? They have the resources here, right? But we still not been able to sort of go ahead and build the technology and product, within this country, that we essentially need, right? So we need to figure out a way to sort of leverage these private sector capability, right? Work in tandem with academia and government. See, I think there are very significant roles for all these three players, right? I mean, I think government brings the scale, right? If you want to scale it, those are the guys that you need to go to, right? Academia brings in that R&D capability, research capability, and industry brings in the product capability, right? So you need all the three to work together for you to finally deliver that impact.
I'm going to stop here on the questions that I have, because we have some questions from the attendees. So let me just take them first. So we have Jagadish here, who's asking, is implementing cost of AI hampering the adoption of AI? I think he means adoption.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think most of the tools that you require for AI are all free today, right? I mean, TensorFlow or other stuff apart from the compute, most of the tools that you require for today is actually almost free. So I don't think cost of implementation. Yeah, but the biggest challenge for startups today to sort of scale and do is, there are two things. One is access to data, access to the right data, right? I mean, that's not easily available. If you're not willing to spend tons of money on it, you are not going to get the right data, right? So that is a challenge, right? I think we need to work on that aspects of making access to relevant curated data easy. That's one. The second is the risk of policy itself, right? So there is always this cloud of whether this particular solutions will be allowed in this sector or not, right? So that is the second. So apart from this, I don't see any big risk. The cost itself is not an happening.
That's in the case of startups, is what you
mentioned. Yeah. I think even for somebody who wants to learn, develop, most of the resources are almost free.
I was reading, I think it was last year, there was a report released by IDC, which is a market research firm. It talks about, in the case of India, how we see the investment both from the private and the public sector increasing in artificial intelligence at a CAGR of 31% to almost $900 million by 2023. I think from where it maybe it was one third of that in 2019, right? And of course, I mean, if you look around, whether it's China, UK, US, they're committing billions of dollars into R&D in this field. So how do you see the role of the two key stakeholders? There are others, but if the two key stakeholders, the industry and the government, when it comes to investment, and I mean capital, because developing AI applications, deploying them, or maybe not deploying, but developing them is a resource intense, is a capital intensive activity. So how do you see the role of these two stakeholders when it comes to actually funding research and development and deployment of applications in India at population scale?
Yeah, I mean, I think here, I think that strategy that we have chosen is to basically the social sector, right? I think investment has to come from the government, right? I mean, private sector is not going to invest in a sector, right? That is not going to apparently provide any immediate returns for you, right? It's a lot of risky investment. If I have to work on a healthcare, right? I mean, I have 10 other options where I can go and invest my money, right? So So first thing is, government should commit, a large this thing for joint this stuff, right? But it should be done jointly, right? It is not sufficient that, see, I think the earlier models have been that, if the government wants to fund, it funds the academia, right? And academia ends up writing papers. Okay, that's how the most of the funds go into, right? I mean, so that's not what you want. You want the products to come out of that, innovations to come out of, IPs to come out of that, right? I think that's where the industry role is, right? But we need to have skin in the game, right? If you have our ideal recommendations in that we've been sort of advocating is that at least in social sectors, areas where which is critical for government, right, where you want to create impact, it should be in the ratio of 80 to 20%. 80% by government, 20% by private sector, just to create their skin in the game, right? So we should do that and run it jointly, right? Let the private sector run it, right? Give them money, right? But hold them accountable for the deliverables, hold them accountable for the outcomes, right? I think that way you do a lot of good because the problems in India are actually problems that you will not get anywhere else, right? I mean, if you really go to researchers outside the world, I mean, I think Indian problems are magnitude bigger and larger, which are basically what attracts global researchers to work on this problem, right? I mean, we have the problems. What we really don't have is the resources for funding those researchers, and also the talent pool which can actually get those things. So I think it's a joint effort, and but I believe that large amount of investment should happen from government.
Right. We have another question. I'm not sure it's a question, so I'll move on to the next one. We have one from Ameya Ashok Naik. We are now starting to hear about quantum computing. What is this, and what effect, if any, will it have on AI development? And where does India stand with respect to this technology?
I mean, quantum is still about 10-15 years away, before you can see any useful application of quantum computing. Right? I think we are in infancy stages of quantum computing, so it's going to be a critical technology because the promise is that it can actually revolutionize compute, right? Once you have large amount of compute available to you, right? I mean, you can do a lot of things with it. Right? So it is important, but as of now, it does not have too much of impact on AI development.
We have another one here from Jagdish. Again, how about using AI for healthcare R&D, especially clinical data management? Can AI be helpful in reducing R&D cost?
Right, it definitely can. I think I don't know what do you mean by clinical, whether it's pharma, drug development, or it's a diagnosis, right? I mean, I think AI is being used in all these places, right? I think in our own center in IIIT Hyderabad, right? We are working on how do you do cancer diagnostics, right? How do you do various cancer diagnostics using AI, right? I mean, I think the if you really look at it, the image visual recognition percentages of AI is today much better than even a trained doctor can do, right? I mean, for example, given a scan, it at 95 to 98% accuracy, it can actually appropriately diagnose what the challenge is, right? I think that particular technology has come of age, and a lot of use is being done, right? All that we need to look at is make this available at scale at affordable cost. I think that is the challenge now.
All right. I just want to step back to what we were discussing earlier on policy and regulation. And I want to take a step back. What would you say are the 2 or 3 top concerns or challenges that need to be actually addressed with policy or regulatory frameworks in order to encourage greater adoption of artificial intelligence in India, but while of course balancing or mitigating the risks associated with it? So what are the challenges that we need to address through regulation and through policy?
I mean, I wouldn't say largely regulation. I think when it comes to regulation, see, data is a critical component of it, right? I think we need to ensure that we want to regulate it. We don't want to over-regulate data. We don't want to also look at and under-regulate. I mean, it's a fine balance that you need to maintain, right? And while the PDP bill is there, right, we don't know what the final shape would be, or we have to wait for the rules to come out to really see what's in the front end. But access to data and who can access the data, right? I mean, that is a critical point, and that needs to be sort of looked at very carefully. The other part that we need to really look at is awareness and access, right? today the awareness within the government stakeholders is very less in terms of what this technology can do to you. Right? I mean, I think if you go to some ministries, right, we got to sort of help them understand what can this do to for them to come and say, okay, I have so many problems. Okay, where can I use them? Right. That's one. Second thing is access to these technologies. Right. I mean, while I know that let's say you government can think of a use case where they can use AI, but they should have access to the right solutions, technologies, right? Which are basically the startup. I think that's where we think, I think private sector has a role, right? I think in things like emerging technology center that you're trying has a role to sort of, help government and enable one, make them aware what it can do for them, and also uh, cut through all these tech jargons and really find out what will work for them and then show it in front of them, for them to adopt. Right? I think those are the two key steps.
What about, you mentioned how we are the largest consumer of mobile data, right? And of course, we still have scope to scale. But I would see it as it coming, or the perspective of, sort of it being the input, the data being the input. But what about, having digital infrastructure like 5G connectivity in place also? Because once you need, faster connectivity to be able to deploy AI solutions. And I'm again, talking about, since we are speaking specifically in the context of social sector, isn't this something that's critical, digital infrastructure like this?
It is critical, and I think that again depends on use case, right? For example, right, 5G is critical technology if you want to do real-time applications. For example, let's say you want to go and automate your entire assembly line, right? I mean, that needs real-time access to data, which has less than microsecond, delay in terms of input output. You're able to exchange it, right? Those are the areas where you would need 5G technology, and 5G is critical. And second, for autonomous kind of stuff, right? Technologies, right? Drivers or things like that, right? 5G is very essential because you need to be real time being able to update data, situation awareness, and things like that for the machine to take appropriate action. So 5G is critical in all those areas, right? And again, high speed bandwidth, right? I mean, the challenge that we have today is that we need 5G because our current infrastructure it's running at 80 to 90%, peak levels, right? I mean, so we don't have any room for growth, right? And current technologies, no matter how much you invest, right, only have this much potential to grow, right? So you need high capable technologies like 5G to help you, increase the pipe size, so that you can do more, right? And people can do more, right? No, so that is critical, and 5G is a critical enabler for AI, right? I mean, especially in use case like manufacturing, retail, a lot of other places.
Going back to what you mentioned about us having to have a framework for use of data, right? I have a question here from Sanya, who's asking, what are the implications of India's proposed data framework on the development and adoption of AI? Both the PDP bill, which is with the Joint Select Committee in the Parliament, as well as the proposed NPD governance framework. Any thoughts
I think
on?
It's too early to comment on both, simply because the PDP bill as we know it, right? I mean, I think as the way the current bill is, right? I mean, I think we can understand why it is like that. It's actually very broad. It's actually a catch-all, kind of framework, right? What we really need to see is what is the final contours, what is the final bill that comes out of gets adopted. That's one. Second, most importantly, what are the rules that get made, right? I mean, how does the rule constrict or use various provisions within that, right? And I think those are critical. I think we need to wait for that, right? I mean, well, I'm not overly worried about the PDP bill itself at this point in time, but we need to watch out for the rules that need to come, right? And the NPD itself, I think the whole idea of NPD is to sort of release data, right, that are held by various entities, for people to use it, right? That's the whole intention, right? While it has a lot of other implications for corporates and other stuff, right? But the intention of the NPD itself is to sort of release that data, because which is very essential for economic activity, value creation, things like that, and especially AI will benefit out. So it's too early, to say that. It's too early to say that, because both of them are in their infant this thing. We have not seen their final stage. There are very some clauses, right? But I think we'll have to see how that get translated to rules. We need to look at how does DPA, and the NPD authority, sort of going to work through this, and what will be the final outcome. But having known the government, I think the typical way of the government is to bring something out and iterate and make it better over a period of time, right? I'm sure that people will, if there are any problematic clauses, again, we'll need to go back, talk about why it is problematic, and we'll see a cycle of that happen.
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier that while I think when it comes to talent, we are third across the world at 8%, but you did mention that there is a critical gap when it comes to the sort of the top talent, right? Because I think what you said is that we are good at sort of using the IP that has been produced by other countries and applying them here. But what we need is to be able to produce, I think what you meant is original work. And we really need to apply ourselves to being able to produce that talent that can, work on such original work. And also maybe, ensure that there is no brain drain as well, right? So my question to you is, what do you think are the 2 or 3 key things that need to be undertaken, again, at a policy level, in order to ensure that we grow this or scale this talent pool that you mentioned? What can we do?
I think a couple of things. Some of our ideas have been that I think one, we need to invest heavily in centers which are applied R&D centers. Create applied R&D center within institutions and invest in them. That's one, right? Bring the best talent in the world to India to sort of for them to bring them here. We need to provide them funding. We need to provide them access to this and help them solve India's problem, right? Get them here, right? And with them, you get a lot of PhD students associate with them, and over a period of time they will learn from the best, right? So that is one way for you to sort of go ahead and do that, right? So it's largely the developing these institutional frameworks for you to sort of make it attractive for people to be in India, work in India problems, right? And make it easier for them to do. Okay. The other thing maybe we should look at is how do you sort of leverage the talent that is already available in the private sector? Okay, if you really look at it, okay, private sector typically operates like a vertical, like siloed vertical, right? So you need to figure out a way to sort of open that out and help the talent to sort of contribute to the problems of this country, right? And we need to create framework, right? Some of the challenges there today that we see are weak regulations, especially trademark and other stuff, right? Because companies don't really go out and work with smaller companies because they are worried about IP protection, they're worried about IP contamination, things like that, right? We are very, very weak laws there, and we need to look at some of those things.
So I think if it's the near to medium term, if I were to ask you again, the 1, 2, 3 key things that we need to get right as a country. One, you mentioned data, now you're talking about the IP regime. Is there anything else that we need to get right in the next, short to medium term for us to really?
I think what we need is focus, right? I think as a country, we should say, okay, AI is the technology that I go after. Okay, here is the structure. And we need to aggregate everything that we do in this country towards this, right? It does not help when we are doing 100 different things in 100 different directions, right? I think that doesn't really help, right? We need to have a very focused outcome. Let's say in healthcare, I want to reduce healthcare costs, outside delivery by so much percentage. This is my cost, right? Direct resources to work on that particular problem, right? I think we need that focus, right? And bring everybody along. Right, we need a way to it's not just government, not just academic, not just industry, right? We need to bring everybody along to achieve the goal, right? And whatever it takes, and that way it creates focus. You are able to measure where your dollars are going, how you're spending, right? And hold people, every stakeholder accountable for their outcome that they promise that they will do.
Okay. I read an article, I think a few days ago, written by one of the additional secretaries at MeitY. I think perhaps he was making a similar point in terms of, I'm not sure, I think so, that, we now need a national program for artificial intelligence. And the way I understood it is that you have this patchwork of, guidelines and rules and some pieces of legislation that are going through the, pipeline. But what you really need is to pull all of that together. And maybe what you're saying that in terms of putting an institutional architecture, even if you may have, relevant sectoral regulators looking into how they should regulate the deployment of AI applications in their respective spheres, but you sort of need somebody up there who's going to have an oversight over all of this activity, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
I think
yeah.
I mean, I think that's the idea, right? I mean, I think we need to know what's happening in this country, who is doing what. I mean, I think if let's say you want to go and find out the top 10 institutes that are working on this particular area, right? Or this particular, let's say, healthcare, cancer research, right? It's very hard to find that, right? I mean, so what it ends up doing is people end up reinventing the wheel. What I should be doing is find out the researcher who did work, right? Take his research, go from there, right? Not do that again, right? So I think the Principal Scientific Advisor Office is doing a great job through their Agni program in terms of trying to get a sense of what's happening in this country in the science and technology space, right? I mean, I think that's critical, right? Then you got to direct that particular stuff into areas where you want the outcomes, right? For example, let's say that particular big commission or big body that I said should set direction, saying that okay, next 5 years, this technology is critical for me. 5 technologies are critical for me. I need these outcomes, right? I mean, somebody has to say that so that everybody can knows that that is my goal and work towards that goal. Right? We lack that today, right? Just like USA has this or other countries have this 5-year plan, 10-year plan, right? Saying that okay, after 5 years, I need to be, I need to have this technology, right? That will enable me to do 1, 2, 3, right? I mean, I think we need that particular stuff. I have not seen so far, right? Maybe I didn't look hard enough, but that is what is required, right? I think a plan that can direct all resources to say that here is what is critical for me.
I'm not wrong. I think the Niti Aayog has proposed something called an oversight body, particularly to ensure that ethics in AI are, principles and ethics in deployment of AI, I sort of adhere to.
Yeah.
I think the last question I have, unless any of the attendees have any further questions, has to do with responsible AI. Can you unpack that concept for us a little bit, particularly in the context of use of data?
Let's say responsible AI is this concept of us being able to sort of build AI solutions the right way. For example, just like you have the security architecture, right? Security today is right from you code, you build in security, right? Principles and build it, right? At every step, you ensure that you are compliant to security principles, right? Responsible AI is about doing that, at every stage of your development, use and adoption, right? You are following principles of fairness, right? Principles of ensuring privacy, right? Ensuring cyber security, right? And also it being human centric, right? Ensuring that does not have bias, right? I mean, that's what it's all about, right? So responsibility is about a full system view of at each step, how do you ensure that you're doing the right things to ensure that end of the day the system that you develop are don't have any inherent bias built in them or inherent challenges that can actually really affect people's lives and outcomes.
Okay. And I mean, is there are you seeing an industry-wide set of standards emerging in this in this area? I know that Microsoft and I think some of the other big tech companies, in fact, have put in place similar principles for themselves, right? But have you seen an industry-wide effort?
I mean, I think what is happening is,
And maybe
as far as I know, each company has their own, they have had their own principles. Those principles not very different. I think a lot of these principles come from, OECD privacy directive, right? It is picked up from there. It's all derived out of that, right? I've not seen an industry-wide stuff, but there are, at least nationwide, you have this GPAI, consortium of countries which are trying to develop these principles, right? These are part of it, right? So there are many various efforts, but I don't think anything that so just like India has done similar. Every country has their own stuff, right? We are yet to see one unified, something like a standard for responsibility. I don't think we are there yet.
And would you say that is something that we need at this point in time? And should it be hard-coded into law or should it be something that's self-regulatory? I mean,
at this point in time, it should be self-regulatory. I think regulating at this point in time will be too much, right? I mean, I think AI itself it's at the starting to be grow, right? So we shouldn't do it at this point in time, but we should encourage people to follow these principles, right? And especially today we should have sectoral ways of doing this. That's the right way to do it, right? I mean, because today the AI itself is sectoral based, right? They are application based, right? They are largely based on use cases. So we need to have, sectoral based kind of high level principles that needs to be followed, right? And you follow, and over a period of time, you hard code them into laws and regulatory requirements.
I don't think we have any further questions from the audience, and I think I am good as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Ananta, again. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
sorry, there are two more questions, one from
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jagdish, one more from Amir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm afraid I seem to have. Is this in the Q&A?
Yeah, that's right. If
Oh,
you'd
yeah,
like,
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry about that. Let me take Jagdish's first. Can you suggest any learning sources for AI offered by Intel or the Government of India for a PhD qualified healthcare professional?
I think you should search in Google for AI for youth or AI for all. I think you'll get Intel. I don't have the link handy. I can send it to. I mean, is there a way to send it? I can send it out later.
Amaya has a question.
sorry, I was just
Yeah, if we want to use AI for social sector, shouldn't we be adopting common data standards in those sectors? Example, health. Having real-time machine-readable data from actual practice is much faster and arguably cheaper than cleaning and annotating data after the fact.
I agree. I mean, I think we need that. I think the National Health Portal, right, or the National Health Mission has the objective of doing something similar to that, right? I think once it comes up, we should see how that data might be useful. But apart from that, data per se in the healthcare is not a problem today. Today, I can set up a standard, let's say in a hospital, right? 6 months down the line, I would have enough data for me to sort of start working on it. I mean, so the data availability itself is not a problem, right? But we need to set those standards, right? And a lot of effort is going on by various people is to see for this sector what are the data requirements are, right? So that you need to define first, and then you go figure out how do you want to get them.
Okay, I'm just going to scroll to see I'm not missing any other questions, but I think we're done. Okay, Anta, thank you so much again for joining us, and thank you to all the attendees as well. And thank you to both for making this discussion both educating and engaging. I hope that at the end of this conversation, we have a little bit more insight into the field than we did before. And that is really the goal of our knowledge transfer series. And we are going to have more of these series in the future on topical issues in technology and society. We have one coming up in the next couple of weeks on central bank digital currencies. So please join us. Thank you again and have a good evening. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Priya and Arjun. Really appreciate. Yeah, enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.